Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 457 of the Dead Robot Society. Paul E. Cooley here, joined as almost always by the wonderful, irascible, grouchy old man, Terry Mixon. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. You say I almost always join you. How long has it been since I've missed an episode?
You know,
Years, maybe?
I can't remember. I probably missed more episodes than you ever have.
It's true.
But, now even when I'm not here, we're posting episodes. So when I'm out here
it's
physically.
Because our robot overlords are watching out and
Is
they're
that what it is?
making things happen behind the scenes.
I thought it was just me doing it in my sleep. It's that other part of my brain that goes, oh shit. You remember the old Dunkin' Donuts commercials where the guy gets up at like 4 a.m., gotta make the donuts. It's like, I wake up at 4 a.m. on Wednesday, gotta make the DRS.
You know what my first job was in high school? I worked at a bakery making the donuts.
No shit.
That was my first job.
Wow, great.
I had to get up, and believe me, I was getting up at around 4 a.m. so I could show up and make the donuts.
Oh my God, that's awful.
But let me tell you, there is nothing as good in the universe as a freshly fried, glazed donut that you just made going in your mouth.
I have no response.
Those taste great, man.
I have no response to this. So I was going to make a crack about Creamfield, but I'm going to let it go.
Don't let that stop you. Go right ahead.
Wait, I just think I just made that joke. I really just need to stop. Please forgive my sleep deprivation.
You sound a little punch drunk, dude. It's like you just got back from Europe or something.
Yeah, I didn't sleep while I was there, and I'm not sleeping as much as I need to now, so I'm all goofed up.
More goofed up than usual.
Yeah, more goofed up than usual. So what the hell were you doing while I was in Europe? What have you been up to, man?
I finished writing the first part of The Secret Project. Whoop. And an announcement on that will probably be coming before too much longer, when the big reveal will happen. So I'm pleased with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right now, I'm writing up a short story to go in the first omnibus edition I'm going to put out with books 1 through 3 of the Empire series.
Cool.
I should have that done in the next couple of days. And everyone should be afraid because it's a Princess Kelsey story and its title is Fist of God.
Okay, I'm intrigued and a little scared.
You should be, because do you remember where the phrase Fist of God came from before in science fiction?
No.
It came from Ringworld.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And in the big Ringworld environment, there was a huge mountain where a piece of orbital debris had struck the Ringworld and punched through it and created this big, massive puncture that stuck into the sky like a huge fist had punched through the Ringworld.
Wasn't it like 20 kilometers high or something ridiculous?
It was something ridiculous like that. And they called it the Fist of God. And it's inspiring, the story that I am writing as we speak.
Cool.
Fear me. Fear Kelsey.
I fear you every Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever the hell it is we normally record. I don't know anymore. When do we record?
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. Okay.
Which we record at 2:00 on Tuesdays. Remind me in a couple of weeks to talk to you about seeing about bumping that back a little bit.
Okay.
I'm trying to protect my writing time a little bit better. When I get on the show at 2:00, that's pretty much it for my day. My writing is over. If we could bump it back an hour or even 2 hours and still fit in your schedule, then I'd get more writing done on podcast day.
You're assuming I have a schedule.
I assume you fix dinner for your lovely wife, so I assume you do have actually a schedule that we need to work around. Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's always like at 3:30 when I get up and I'm like, oh, I need to do the chores before she comes home. So that's when it's, laundry, washing dishes, clean up the kitchen, beat the cats, the usual thing. So
Yeah, obviously the beating the cats hasn't worked out for you.
No, since they're changing the thermostat. So
yeah.
So basically you've been busy writing and getting stuff ready. So in other words, the usual.
The usual. Reconnaissance Enforced, the audiobook is in ACX's hands.
Yay.
It's going through its quality check. So a couple of weeks, you may have another audiobook, dear listeners. And believe me, Veronica did a wonderful job as always.
Yeah, that Veronica person. So overrated.
What? Bite your tongue.
Hi, Veronica.
You're going to pay for that.
Oh, I am going to pay for it. You have more ways than one, actually. Let's see. I had this wonderful dream that I was going to go on vacation and I was going to have some dead time because my uncle and aunt go to sleep early, and so does my wife. So I had this idea to show up at the bar and sit out my iPad and write. And it did happen a couple times. I think I actually managed one evening get like 1,000, 2,000 words, but really I didn't get much done. I think it was partly sleep deprivation, partly exhaustion and information overload from, spending days walking around Vienna, Budapest, Passau, and Nuremberg. But I kind of got recharged on the writing thing because I came home, and even as exhausted as I was and have been, I've cranked out, I don't know, 4,000 words in the last 2 days. I haven't been able to write today at all because I had all this other crap to deal with, like getting DRS ready to go for tonight and handling other things. But I think it's working again. I went back to Flames.
Maybe you'll finish it this time.
Well, I've already written, I think, 3,000 words on it. So now we're at like 85K, and I kind of see the end coming. I took your advice.
Uh-oh, there's always a dangerous thing. Which piece of advice was it?
The most horrible, awful piece of advice you could ever give someone who didn't know where to take a book.
Write the next sentence?
Write the next sentence.
Wonderful advice.
I did that with Destruction, and I got 3 chapters done. And then I did that with Flames, and I've gotten 2.5 chapters, 3 chapters done on that. So, and it was just a matter of saying, I don't know where this is going, and I don't know if this is the right way to go, but let's just trust my subconscious to lead me where I needed to go. So that's worked. I'm hoping it continues to work.
It usually does. Your subconscious knows how to tell a story. Even if you don't know where the story is going, as long as you keep wading into it, the ending will become clear. It's easy to fix something once the words are on paper.
Yes.
But if you don't actually get the words down, you're pretty stuck.
And I have this bad habit of getting locked into how I need to do something to make it work the way I want it to work. And I think that I need to start trusting myself a little bit more on letting myself find my way. It's, we talked about the fact that there's outliners, there's pantsers, and then there's a hybrid. There's something in between there. And in a lot of ways, for the novel stuff I'm writing now, because of the complexity, especially with Derelict, the Derelict Saga and the Black in particular, those two animals, I have to do so much thinking ahead before I put it down, because I have to look at what happened in the past and close the threads that I started and use them accordingly to get to the ending, because otherwise the entire story falls apart. I don't want to write a conclusion to a series that leaves the reader going, well, that was stupid. I'm sorry I hung out for 200,000 words to find out this shitty ending. So that's a big fear that I'm having to get over. And I understand it completely. How many series have you read, Terry, where the last book in it was just a huge letdown?
There's been a few, and occasionally they've come from authors that I've trusted, and that makes it worse, because you're enjoying the ride, you're enjoying where things are going, and then right at the end, the hammer comes down, and you're like, what the hell happened?
And that's why I still haven't read the last Dark Tower book in that series. And that's like my favorite series of all time from Mr. King. And I think it's got some of his best writing in it. But after the 6th book, I was like, I'm not. I just it just turned me off, and I didn't even want to read the last book, and I still haven't. And it's been out for what, 15, 20 years now, and I still haven't read it. And everybody tells me you need to read it to finish up the series, Justin in particular. But I'm kind of like, I feel like he jumped the shark, and I just don't know how to get back there. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person that puts out, you know, a really good story and then completely bollocks it up in the end. I just don't want to be that guy.
One thing you need to keep in mind here is that every bit of reading is personal taste. It all falls to the reader. And even if you think something, or even if one person thinks that the author bollocksed it up, there'll be other authors or other readers that don't think that. And not to go ahead and say that I want to drag somebody out and compare it to, but the most recent example of where I, as a reader, excuse me, was turned off was when I was listening to Nathan Lowell's share books.
Yeah, that ending.
When it got to the ending on book 6, I felt, you know, really intensely the dislike of how things ended. But the series continued. The character goes on. I haven't read any of the stories because my personal choice, that wasn't what I wanted to read, so I haven't gone back. But plenty of other people have said that it was a brilliant decision and that they loved it. So it just goes to prove to you that no matter what you do, you're going to have people that like it and people that don't like it. You can't live your life worried about the people that aren't going to like what you're doing. More people will like what you're doing than don't. Don't be afraid. Be Nathan Lowell, God damn it.
Why the fuck do you think I kill characters? I make you love them.
You hate them?
No, you know, the characters I do the most horrible thing to are the ones I love the most. And
you're a sadist, you bastard.
I know, I'm just a realist because it's life. You know, the hero doesn't always get to go off in the sunset with a significant other. Bad shit happens. People limp out. I've said that before. They limp out, missing limbs, missing loved ones, and into a completely different world that they never imagined themselves to be in. A reality shattered, and suddenly they have to rebuild themselves. And some of those characters that happens to are characters I want to continue writing about because I want to see how they get past it. You know,
with that. And to be perfectly clear, just because since this is going out on the episode, Nathan Lowell is a wonderful author. He's a great author. I just, as a reader, I don't know that I can trust that I'm going to get the story that I expect, and I don't want to have that same emotional letdown that I had, and that's the reason that I don't read him anymore. He is a great author.
Yes.
So if you like science fiction, read Nathan Lowell. Don't be Terry. Be yourself.
Don't be Terry. That's the new slogan of the show. Don't be Terry. In fact, I'm titling this episode. I'm changing the episode title. Don't be Terry. I'm gonna do that right now.
There you go.
All right. Well, this kind of leads into some of the things we talked about in this particular episode. So I guess we should actually get to it.
Let's get to it.
All right, here we go. At some point, I do think we need to do another nuts and bolts episode.
We do. One of the problems with upping your game as a writer is that suddenly you find yourself in the position of saying, oh, wait, I'm a storyteller and the nuts and bolts have changed. The things that I'm actually interested in focusing on suddenly have shifted away from granular specifics to grand storytelling concepts. Yeah. And then you go, well, damn it. How do I talk about sentence structure now? Damn it. Passive voice. Don't fucking worry about it. Just go ahead and write the damn story.
True. But I think that there's, There is an evolution going on. I think the more that you write, the more experience you get. The more experience you get, the more you want to try and dig deeper. You want to throw away the shovel and get an earth mover. You want to basically see just, oh, stop it, Terry. You're already doing it. You just don't know you're doing it. When you start talking about the grand story concepts, I think basically you try and write something that is larger than maybe what you're comfortable with.
You know, I think you just may have changed our subject topic away from answering questions to this right here. To this right here. Damned if I know what you're actually going to call it. But I'm going to go ahead and say I totally disagree with you. I completely and utterly disagree with everything you just said.
Wow. Holy shit. All right. Go for it. I want to hear why I'm wrong.
I think that let me take one step back. Rather than say why I think you're wrong, I'm going to say that Dean Wesley Smith has out a book where he talks about the stages of a writer. He says there are 4 stages of a writer. And I'm just going off memory here, so I may get some of the specifics wrong.
Self-loathing, self-loathing, and more self-loathing.
Why, sure, we'll run with that. No, the stage 1 writer is focused on the individual words.
Okay.
The stage 2 writer is starting to see some of the things that are beyond just the scope of the little black marks on the page, but is still really caught up in worried about the words and the phrasing and the sentence structure and that. Stage 3, you're into looking at this as a story and you're beyond looking at the individual words. You may still care about those words, but they aren't the focus anymore. Now the story is the focus. Right. And stage 3 apparently is a very large array of different viewpoints. And then stage 4, you've moved beyond the structure and you're just telling the story and it's just flowing out of you. Obviously, you could go to look at the book that he wrote on this or the blog post that he made on this subject and find out a lot more detail. And we'll go ahead and we'll find the specifics of it to include in the show notes. But if I was looking at his storytelling arc, I'm a stage 3 writer, and I am desperately trying to get rid of focusing on the structure and instead focus on just letting my subconscious tell the story that I want to tell.
Okay.
So I could not disagree more with saying that I'm trying to bring in an earth mover to move my story along. I'm trying to ignore the fact that the structure exists at all.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying, Terry.
Okay, then I totally misunderstood you. Maybe I totally agree with you. Maybe we're in violent agreement.
Violent agreement. Wow. Wow. I'm not even going to make the joke I was going to make. See, I'm doing better. Mainly because I have to edit, and I don't want to have to edit this shit out.
That's right. It's good stuff. It's good stuff, man.
Not because I don't want to say it. I understand what you're saying, what Dean Wesley Smith was saying. I understand that. My point was more about the kinds of stories you want to tackle, or the kinds of stories you let yourself tackle. For instance, 5 or 6 years ago, I would never, ever, ever have attempted something like Derelict. Never. I want to do those kinds of things. I've always wanted to do stories this large, but I would never have had the guts or the talent or the skill at the time to do that. So it's kind of like the more experience, the more books I've come out or put out, the more confident I am in my ability to handle a story this large. And write a contiguous story this large. I would never have even attempted it, many years ago. So I think there are some changes that happen along the way about the more you write, not just the words themselves, not just the story itself, but the scope of the kinds of thinking that you can get into. And you, Terry, even though you have a penchant for writing, basically space opera, one installment at a time, but a finished story by the end of each book, you're still writing this massive thing. you don't necessarily know where it's going to end, but you have all these different elements that keep coming at, and you keep adding more of them. And at some point, you're going to have to deal with them in the series itself.
Yeah, it's true. Or I just ignore the fact they ever existed and keep running.
Just ignore it and you just run along. The thing is, though, you're introducing all that stuff knowing that at some point you can go back to it. But if you make it important enough, then you know you're going to have to tackle it.
Tackle it in the future? Yes. Go back. Are we talking about going back in the novel that I'm currently writing?
No. Shit,
because I'm not going to do that.
Shit, no. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm simply saying that, you know, we've moved past a ship more or less being isolated in this other, through your wormhole stuff, and into basically back to you know, old Earth area or whatever. Mm-hmm. And now you're moving forward where you're bringing that stuff back to where they're from. Right. It's all kind of mixing together. So you're combining all these elements. Empire of Bones could have just ended with them exploring just the ancient empire. That's what the entire series could have been about.
It could have been. Yeah. And when I started writing it, God only knows what I actually intended.
I think that's the beautiful serendipity of what we do and what we allow ourselves to do. And I think that sometimes, especially since some of the Facebook messages we've seen lately, posts on the boards, there are some writers out there who are afraid to get into that morass or find it to be a morass. You know, as Sue Bayman said, Derelict Tomb is the great swampy middle. It is the entire great swampy middle of the entire story. And I let myself go crazy with it. And it wasn't the great swampy middle. It was a hell of a lot of fun to write. And it was a hell of a lot of fun, I hope, for folks to read and listen to. But again, the fact that I was willing to go after that rather than just basically making I could have made Derelict just a 90,000 word novel about them going to Mira, and that would be that. I didn't need all this other shit.
Who needs that?
But I found myself wanting to put more and more in it. And of course, as soon as I did that, I knew I was screwed. There was no way I was going to put this out in one book. It's just too big. But I think that's the more books you put out, the more confident you get about doing these kinds of things. I can't really fathom trying to put out a 700 word epic fantasy novel as my first book. I would not have done that at all, ever attempted that, because it's just too nasty and horrible. And even if I was an epic fantasy writer or an epic science fiction writer, I don't think I would attempt to put out a book that large, both for simple economic reasons, and then also because I don't want to be pulling all of my hair out and go, bald by 50. So that's the way I think. What do you think about that line of reasoning?
I think that's true.
I think we're not going to get violent disagreement. God damn it!
Not about that. Not about that. We're not going to get into violent disagreement. I guess it really depends on how you're looking at where you are in your career and what you're actually trying to do. As storytellers, we evolve. We don't know when we start out this journey, we don't know what we should be concerned about, because we really don't know how to tell a story. Deep in our subconscious, we know how to tell stories, but we let our critical voice get in the way of being able to do so. And so much of growing as a writer is learning how to get the critical voice out of the creation process so that we're just focusing on the creative voice. If we could figure out how to box up the critical voice and not open it up at all in the entire process as we go along, we would be amazing storytellers. We would have stories that were perhaps so much so in character voice that it would have passive stuff, it would have weird sentences, it would have whatever you want to have in there. But at some point you get to realize that perfect grammar is not part of storytelling.
Especially not in dialogue.
Well, yeah, but even when you're not in dialogue, when you're in the narrator's voice, even if you've got basically an invisible narrator where you're just third person limited and you're inside the person's head, the parts that aren't dialogue are still the character. And it doesn't matter that those parts may not have perfect grammar, that they may have passive voice, that they may have any number of other grammarly flaws. You still need to keep those in there because that's your voice. And when you start trying to make it clean and you start going in there with your critical voice, trying to make everything sound or look like it's in some type of English style teacher grammar, you just take yourself right out of the story. And that's hard to explain.
No, I know how you what you're talking about. I was going through this today when I was writing on Destruction. There is a point, especially when a character is when I'm in the character's head and I'm trying to grab on, and if they're being sarcastic to themselves, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Stuff like, you know, thinking that it's just basically mental eye rolling is the way I think about it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's just one word. Yeah. Period. That's it. If you take it out of context, do what now?
Yeah, about that.
Taken out of context, it's shitty. It's just shitty. But you put it in the context to the paragraph, especially if you're ending the paragraph that way, then it makes sense. It will fail all the grammar checks and everything else, which is why I turn that shit off. But that is part of what you're doing and how you're hearing the voices in your head and everything else. And I think that stuff is damn important. And I wouldn't work with an editor who tried to cut that kind of stuff out. If it's awkward, that's different. A little bit different. If there's a better way to express it with a different word, that's also a different story.
One of the things that I've picked up from Dean Wesley Smith that's improved my writing craft is something he calls cycling. It's a way to avoid rewriting writing anything that you're doing, because you stay inside the creative process while you're doing it. You cut the critical voice out, because you're not going back to reread something and say, oh, that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. What you do is you write a page, 400 words, 500 words, 1,000 words, whatever is comfortable for you. And then you go back and you read back through it as just right as a part of your process of writing it. So you're cycling back over something you just wrote, and you're fixing a spelling error there. You're maybe tweaking the way something is said. You just stay inside the creative voice until you get to the blank page again, and then you just rock on some more. And when you get to the end of the book, you are literally done. You run a spell check without grammar checking and send it off to your first reader. Boom, done.
Assuming you've already made all the continuity checks.
Well, hopefully if you find something that you realize you've got to change, that's the point where you go back and you change it right there. You don't make a note to yourself. You don't put anything in the story and say, oh, go back later and change this. Damn it, I need to change this character doing this in chapter 4. Go back, change it, go through and fix everything continuity-wise right then while you're in the creative voice, and then continue writing.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I mean, I like the idea of that. Another strategy I use is if I'm gonna say, for instance, I wrote in Dickerson's from Dickerson's point of view 2 chapters ago, I'll probably go back and read that chapter to get in his headspace before I start the next chapter that I'm back in his head, right? Because
sure, you can do that.
Because just doing that, seeing the cadence of speech and everything else and what he was thinking at the time and how to carry that forward. And this goes back to that scene sequel stuff we discussed in one of the previous episodes. The James Butcher episode.
Jim Butcher?
Jim Butcher, thank you.
Which is like James, but sort of different.
Right, sort of different, kind of sort of different. Terrence. So the I actually have no idea if that's your real first name. I just thought I'd throw that out there anyway.
It's not my real first name, but yeah.
You understood what I said.
I understood what you meant.
You understood what I meant, Terrence, right? We're all Terrence.
We're all sort of like each other. It's like Just a little. It's like Bob and his clones.
Yeah, Terrence and Phillip from South Park.
Oh dear God! Ha ha ha!
I always knew you were a closet Canadian. Anyway,
no. I have never seen that, but my wife went through a binge of watching every South Park episode ever. So I am now very conversant in South Park.
He's got his South Park badge and everything. Where the hell was I going with this anyway?
I couldn't even begin to tell you. You were talking about rereading
scenes
to get in voice.
Yeah, so going back and reading that gives you a chance to basically wake up to it. Wake up your brain, wake up your creative voice, and remember how, where you were in the story at that time. And I think that's very, very helpful when you're trying to write and go forward. And I know there are some folks who've talked about they finish a chapter and they don't know how to begin the next chapter, or where to go with it, or they come back to the next chapter and they get writer's block on it. Go back and read the previous chapter.
The best way I found to get out of writer's block? To write a sentence.
Write a sentence.
And then write another sentence. And then keep writing those sentences. You may discover that you've written 2 pages and suddenly realize, oh, this is where I need to be, right here. And then you dump those 2 pages. But the best way to get through writer's block is to get through it. You may not write the right words, but you'll write some words and you'll figure out where you need to go. And either you A, keep what you wrote, or B, you trash it, but you'll find your way.
I find in those moments, I find myself opening up my notes app, and I will write a mini essay to myself.
That works too.
It's just basically cleaning out the bullshit that's running around my brain. I want to get how I'm feeling at the time, what I'm thinking about. I want to get all that crap out because I don't want it. If there's vacancy inside the brain more than usual, then I feel like I can channel the creativity a little bit better. It's really just it's like if you're playing piano or you play trumpet or anything like that, or you're an actor, there's these little exercises you do to basically warm up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we're talking about is warming up. It's just a matter of, getting into the headspace. There are people I know who can jump in the middle of anything at any time and be right there. I'm not one of those people. So, sometimes I am. Sometimes I open up and the document, and I'm just ready to go. I've already got the first paragraph written before I sit down, and it's all in my brain. And all I got to do is let it flow through my fingertips. But there are times when it's hard. It's just like dealing with a car in frozen weather. Sometimes the crank just doesn't want to turn, and so go do something else to warm up. And then I think when you come back, you'll be in better shape.
I'm one of those bastards that when I start writing, I very seldom throw away what I've written.
Mm-hmm.
I usually figure out where I need to start, and it's the appropriate place to do so. But I can certainly understand, it being hard to go. When I'm in the middle of the story, oh man, and I'm getting slow, it's not where I need to go ahead and chunk out what I've just done. But I need to shake things up. I need to figure out what I need to do as a pantser to shake things up and introduce the man with the gun.
Or throw the tomato. Yeah. I can't remember which author said that, but he's like, whenever the story just kind of gets boring and doesn't seem to be going anywhere, just throw a tomato. I'm like, really? Yeah. It's always good to introduce something like that. I mean, we're going to keep going back to this butcher thing because that group of blog posts were just, genius. And yet they're so common sense, it's ridiculous. But sometimes
it's amazing how often we have to have something spelled out simply so that we can grasp the concept. Because you may think, oh, this is just basic stuff. You got to say the basic stuff. You've got to lay the basic stuff out in a way that's clear and understandable so that folks can actually grasp the concepts that you're trying to get across.
Yeah. Something like that.
And Jim Butcher, he's got a lot of experience.
Oh, the guy's a hack. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's a hack. He's a complete and total hack. I wouldn't listen to anything he says.
I'm going to mess you up by when his next book comes out, assigning it as our reading material, and then you'll have to catch up on his series.
Oh, my stars. What will I ever do?
You'll be listening to a lot of Dresden.
Mainline it. Just
him burning down lots of Walmarts and God only knows what else.
Burning down Chicago. See, he's actually the mule that started the fire. Anyway,
he would be the first to admit that he's the mule.
When I
stubborn.
When I saw him at when I first saw him at a reading, somebody asked him about Chicago because he doesn't live there, and that's where all the Dresden books are set. Is essentially in Chicago, at least the ones that I've read. And he was like, I've never been to Chicago. And they're like, what? He's like, I have friends who live there.
Why does he destroy Chicago?
I don't know. If I remember correctly, it was the idea of ley lines and the fact that Great Lakes were there and all these kinds of things and yada, yada, and blah, 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 and whatever. I don't know why he gravitated toward Chicago. I really don't know, but he did.
We'll have to invite him on the show and ask him.
Boy, if he would come on our show. Get on that, Booker. Get on that.
He can only say no.
Yeah, he can only say no. It's just the scene sequel stuff makes so much sense because if you just keep repeating it, and I go back and I look at my books, and I've been doing that, and it's just what I do. It's how I figured out how to do things, but I couldn't describe to you what I was doing, and he did. He just put it down perfectly.
I've had one of my beta readers get back to me about Tree of Liberty and say that I just wrote a story there that just kept flowing because I'd hit a mini cliffhanger for one character and then start with a different one.
Right. And that's the pattern that I do. That is the pattern that both you and I kind of grew up with. And most of the popular thrillers and mysteries and I guess, space operas the same way. You go back and look, and that's basically what the structure is. That's almost the structure for genre fiction if you have multiple points of view. That's exactly how you want to do it.
For me, the hardest thing to do is figuring out how many threads, how many characters to have for point of view characters, how to juggle them, and how to bring all of the little arcs that they're doing together to a close at roughly the same time. That's the hardest part of storytelling for me at my current stage of writing, is to figure out how to do that. And I basically don't. I basically throw out lots of different things and herd the cats to where they're close to being together at the end, and then start chasing everybody with a broom to get them there.
And of course, you love the red herring.
And anything that doesn't work out, well, that's a red herring.
I think maybe I talked about this, maybe I didn't. What I'm doing with Derelict, since I had a problem getting into, I don't know, I had a problem getting into the mindset of the AI Black, the command crew of SNR Black, and Gunny and his squad of Marines. I had trouble for some reason. It just wasn't happening. So I went in Scrivener and I made 3 different folders, one for Kalimura's squad, one for what was going on in SNR Black, and then another one for Gunny's squad. And I put those three folders in there, and I've just been writing thus far 20, I think over 20,000 words just on Kalimura's squad without any distraction of the other story lines. And I can do that because these folks are completely isolated from what's going on inside the ship. But what they're experiencing right now is very important to what SNR Black is going to experience. And I was not aware of that. So by doing this whole exercise of just going with them through the ship, I figured out what's going to happen to the ship, to SNR Black and all the folks that are aboard her, and how that's going to impact the end of this book, possibly the end of the series. So that all has really got me kind of excited to keep going forward. And I'm just discovering more stuff, and there's more things I want to talk about. And doing the scene sequel thing is very important. I need these characters to think about what's going on, what they're experiencing, and what it means, if anything.
One of the most difficult things to juggle around at this point for me is the fact that I do leave little threads hanging here and there, and they build up. The number of threads that I have after 7 books in the Empire of Bones saga is I've got a couple of pages of things that I've mentioned that should be covered, that I could cover, that I have not covered, that I may never cover, that may never happen, other than just some passing reference where I could go off and write a novel about what's happening there.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, if I find those moments, I have a notepad, or I go and create a new Scrivener file and just type in the synopsis of what I was thinking about. And now it's gone. It's out of there. It's over there. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go back to it. It's just there. And then when I'm hunting around for, you know, what's in my backlog of shit that I wanted to do, it's time to go pick out the next shiny to work on. Then I'll go and say, oh, I'm going to work on that one.
What I'm going to do in Battle for Terra is I was originally going to write a fairly straightforward story with some major plot twists as things went along, because obviously they don't know the circumstances that they're going to find there.
Right.
And I had, I don't know, a dream. It wasn't a real dream, but it was like a daydream of, you know, what if something like this happened? Totally unrelated to the storyline from Battle for Terra. And I threw it out and said, no, that's just too off the wall. I can't do that. Even though I'd covered something that the possibility of something like that might exist in my universe, I really had no intention of exercising it until the idea of a character fully formed jumped into my brain, and I said, wouldn't that really screw up the plot line? Why, yes, it would, as a matter of fact. So I'm bringing that character in, and it's going to make a total hash of what I had in mind, what all the characters had in mind, and it's going to have repercussions not only throughout this book, but going forward and possibly into other books.
Yeah, just make sure you don't jump the shark.
Well, see, now, I think that when you start talking jumping the shark, you're talking about doing something solely because you want to shake things up and you can never get back to where you started from. It's because you feel you lack something. I'm not introducing this character because I feel I lack something. I'm introducing this character because I think it would be a howling good time to tell the story of throwing this character in with everyone else.
So in other words, you're not looking for an excuse. You had a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that is the big difference. That has been, those kinds of things have kept happening with this particular series. And I wish they had happened with the Black in the same way, because I think the Black would be so much better for it. But it is what it is. I can't fix it. I can't go back and rewrite history. So I just basically have to learn these lessons and use them for the next series. And I think I feel more confident about doing that now. Especially with a crazy zany idea. And since I'm writing this space opera sci-fi, but it's not hard sci-fi, but it is hard sci-fi, but it's this, it's that, and you know, physics be damned, this is how shit works.
It's space opera, just get over it.
I'm beginning to think I shouldn't have put military sci-fi on this at all, but whatever.
But it has Marines. It has to be military sci-fi.
I know it has space Marines, damn it, which I said I wouldn't do. But
and look how well it's working for you.
But as I said, I did it my way. If the sequel, if the series, if Derelict Destruction ends the way I think it does, then the next series will definitely be military sci-fi, big time. But we'll see how that works. But
when giant space ants come to strip the solar system bare, of course it's going to have to be military sci-fi.
I would never do such a thing. Ever do such a thing. Those ideas that come along is kind of like, oh, wait, I described this at the beginning, but I didn't know what it meant. And then finding out what it means later on. And I had a reviewer on Amazon gave me a 1-star review for Tomb because I used ordinance instead of ordinance, or excuse me, ordinance instead of ordinance.
You were going ahead and write, some laws about the dealing with it instead of blowing shit up.
So, yeah, okay, fine. I think I can be forgiven for one word out of 102,000. If not, go fuck yourself. But the other thing was, he was like, well, the descriptions of the darkness inside the ship don't make physical sense. A CRT monitor makes enough light to do that. Maybe not on this ship. And dude, you kind of,
laws of physics have been changed.
And you're gonna, and I actually replied to him. I said, my apologies for the misuse of the word. Blah, blah, blah. I'll try and do better next time, but I'm not going to apologize for my descriptions of the ship because there was a reason. But I'm glad you gave the series a try. That's all I said. That's kind of the way I think about it. I'm leaving loose ends. I will tie them up.
You're telling a story to amuse yourself.
Yeah,
you're taking everybody else along for the ride. That's bringing this back to telling a story as opposed to writing out something. You may leave things that don't make sense. The reader has to trust that you're going to get there. And that's one of the things that we discover as writers is we'll build an audience of people that are willing to suspend their disbelief and wait for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
And that's an important aspect of being a storyteller is you can't tell the entire thing all at once. You've got to drag it out and you've got to drop the bits when they make the best sense. And sometimes that's not right when the reader is thinking about it.
Right. And sometimes we don't do it well. Sometimes we're going to miss things. Sometimes it's just not going to work. That's
one of the things about being a writer is we grow as we go along. Our book 1 is not as good as our book 12.
And the other thing is, I think as you get more confident, you're willing to take more chances. And when you take more chances, hey, it's something you've never done before. You may suck at it, but you tried it. And you go back and look at it, and if it didn't work, it didn't work. Move the fuck on. Lesson learned, move on.
That's one of the things that I learned going forward as a writer is I got a little ambitious with how many point of view characters to have. So I can fix that.
You get a coffin, and you get a coffin, and
why, yes.
Yes, that's exactly the way it works in genre fiction. I'll just kill all this, this group of characters is annoying me. Fuck them. I just want them gone. All right, well,
the people that I ended up killing, I was having fun writing some of the things about them, but I had to look at the future. I had to think about options.
Right. I could pull a Tolkien with Saruman and just leave him in the tower and ignore him. Yeah, we're not going to deal with this anymore. This plot thread's dead. We're just moving on to the 3rd book now. It's like, wait, whoa, hang on.
So Tolkien said, anyway.
Yeah, Tolkien said, so anyway, Gandalf the White, blah, blah, blah. I don't hear too many people talk about that, but as far as I'm concerned, that's a huge fucking plot hole. But regardless, I find it better to kill them or maim them in some horrible way that you'll never see them again, or that if you do, they're going to be incapable of adding anything to the story. So as cliche as it is to just pull out the knife and start slitting throats, I think there is occasionally there's a call for it when you have too many of those characters or when a character didn't go anywhere.
A fast typist can kill many in one night, 1,000 throats in one night.
Shit, Scott Sigler can destroy millions or billions even in a couple paragraphs. So,
kinetic strike.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That would never happen in evolution or extinction. That would never, a kinetic strike would never happen in one of those in the Black Series. Nope. Kinetic strike would never happen. And have lots of unforeseen consequences. There would never be anything like that.
As a pantser, I will tell you that unforeseen consequences are your friend.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
When I write a scene and I start going in a certain way, it may take a couple of chapters before I suddenly have this blinding flash of insight of, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh, well, that happened. Now what do I do? And I think there is a way of looking at it. It's like what are they called? Parallel bars?
There are parallel bars. I don't know if that's what we're speaking about, but they do exist.
Okay. I don't know if that's the correct name for this particular exercise, but where you've got the poles at different heights.
Those are not parallel bars. The ones that are the same height are parallel bars.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Uneven bars are the ones that you're speaking of.
Uneven bars. Okay. So I like to think of it as uneven bars to where you just keep basically raising the bar every time. And so
you bitch, look what you're doing to those poor gymnasts.
So you keep raising it, and then of course you have a step down, but sometimes that step down is a really big drop.
You know, I should go ahead and send you the amazing dismount from the uneven bars that I still remember seeing from an Olympics past.
Oh God.
It's rough when you miss that last grab.
I thought you were going to say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to send you that restraining order."
No, the uneven bars. This gymnast is doing the business. La 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 la. Flip. La, 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 la. Missed the final grab. Slams
Oops.
from about 12 feet up, straight down, fully parallel to the ground. Boom.
That just does not sound like fun at all.
That sounds like something you would do to a character, to tell you the truth.
Shit, that sounds like something I would do if I tried to use the uneven parallel bars, uneven bars, whatever they're called. I wouldn't even make it to the first one. It'd be like I grab for it and just
you
completely
would do the spin thing and just go, whoa, just totally gone.
As if I could get it.
That's sort of a dismount, sort of.
As if I could exceed the gravitational quotient and get my fat ass up there. That's completely different deal. But
anyhow,
I think it is fun to throw in more and more things. I mean, somebody put up on Facebook about some author was talking to a group of kids and said, when somebody asks you what your story is about means nothing. What your story is actually about is who are these people, what do they want, and how can I keep them from getting it?
That's been one of the hardest things that I have learned as an author, is trying to deny my characters.
You have to deny them. If you give them everything they want, it's a poorly made rom-com. Oh,
I agree. And I do deny my characters, but it's hard. You want to give them some success. Or maybe I should say it a different way. It's hard to deny them as bad as Jim Butcher denies Dresden. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Because I look at Dresden and I go, man, he just really fucks Dresden over so bad.
His romantic life.
To do that.
His romantic life, his professional life. Yeah, his friendships, everything's a mess.
I can't make myself make my characters as big a stinking pile of mess as that. But I do deny them.
Oh, I think you can make them do that, Terry. We're just waiting. We're just waiting for our wonderful lotus blossom to float free and find that Havoc is very liberating.
Mm-hmm.
Complete and total Havoc is very liberating. There's a reason why all the popular gumshoes have fucked up lives at home.
You know, I'm going to want you to remember you just said that as you're listening to the book that's assigned. Because I've finished the book and I'm looking at that character going, I don't know. I think the author may have taken that a little too far because, you could take some of these tropes just a little over the line.
Oh, no. Okay. Well,
We'll see what you think.
Aha. Anyway, there is a wicked, there can be those moments of absolutely wicked fun when you're sitting there writing along and you're like, oh, I could do that. How do I get them out of that? If I put that in there, how do we get them? Well, let's find out.
The way that I tend to write stories, as I am currently now as a writer, is I have my characters blithely wandering down the primrose path. And the reader can see, something may be appearing on the horizon here that's, not so pleasant.
That they're completely oblivious to.
That they are completely oblivious to, mainly because I do like including the bad guys as point of view characters. So the good guys are like, la, 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 la. Holy shit!
Meanwhile, the readers are sitting there going, this is going to be a train wreck.
And then the scramble starts when the train wreck begins to unfold.
And that's
how my writing style goes.
Yeah, and that is actually adding suspense. I mean, that's very important. I don't consider we've had this discussion about genres. I don't consider suspense a genre. Suspense is some heretic. Suspense is something you put in stories. It just is. Your favorite stories are going to have suspense. They just are. You're gonna, even if the story is just told from first person, you're going to see something the character doesn't necessarily see. And you're going to figure out maybe what this other character's motivations are that is going to thwart your first person narrator. And or you're going to be wondering about the other character's motivations for what they're doing. That's also suspense. And sometimes it can work where you have a rather oblivious first person narrator. Dresden could be ridiculously oblivious at times and miss things that are very, very obvious. And there's a reason why he misses them, is because he's focusing on this big picture thing and doesn't see the dagger somebody's holding directly in front of his face until
or vice versa.
Or vice versa. That's true. He's looking at the dagger and not noticing the world's burning down around him. And those are things that we put in the tales because, well, hell, it's fun.
And I got to tell you, the fact that Dresden can have an animated dinosaur skeleton means you could pretty much do any damn thing you like in your stories as long as it's entertaining.
That is still one of my favorite scenes from that series, is Bob sitting inside the T-Rex skull and controlling the dinosaur. That is still just one of the all-time.
It is living proof of what I had said earlier at the beginning of this, that you're telling a story and you're entertaining yourself and you're taking the reader along for the ride. If you are having a good time, odds are very good the reader is going to be having one right along with you, especially if they know you and they trust you.
I think that's one of the hard parts. Well, I mean, we just discussed the Bob book a few episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, We Are Legion, We Are Bob. And have you looked at the comments for that episode?
I did not. I've looked at the Facebook post. I don't tend to go back to the DRS website and look at comments on the posts there. So there might have been some that I did not see, but I've seen the ones on the Facebook. Yeah.
Okay. The ones on Facebook were really interesting because of how many people really loved the book and basically agreed with our summation. But We Are Legion, We Are Bob sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous in so many ways, and yet it works because it's just a hell of a lot of fun, and it really blows your brain up trying to keep track of everything. But at the same time, you do want to see how all these different Bobs are doing what they're doing, and it's just so much fun to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the book works so well. It's because he was just like, I have a crazy idea. I looked at von Neumann probes and went, hell, let's write a story about a von Neumann probe AI, sentient AI, who's doing all this crazy stuff and has real thoughts from a real human being behind them. And voila, you've got Bob. You've got the Bobiverse, and it works really well. That's somebody entertaining themselves. There's no overarching goal in this necessarily. It just sounded like a cool idea, so you started writing it.
Yeah, and it's fairly obvious to me, looking at the story as it's being told, that when he started writing the story, he probably didn't know where he was going with this. I sense some pantsing going on here.
Sense pantsing.
My pants sense went off.
My pants sense. Oh, yeah. Well, you can actually see that in some of these books where be going along, and then suddenly there's something happens that you really weren't prepared for. That's a pantser at work there, folks. That's somebody who said, "Oh, I've got this beautiful outline, but I didn't think about this. Let me explore. Oh, that works. Let's throw that in there." That's the pantsing going on, which is perfect. I love that. I love those moments. Those moments are what keep me coming back to the keyboard.
You are going to love Battle for Terra.
Oh, good. I just have like 3 Empire of Bones books to catch up on first.
Well, luckily enough, I think that I have one coming out on Audible very shortly.
Yes. And lucky for me, I've got Derelict Tomb coming out on Audible very soon. We hope. So,
to drag this back to where we started this conversation.
We started the conversation. I thought we just injected ourselves into a chaos.
One of the things that as a reader that I am starting to do is not try to prejudge a book. I used to read a description of the book and go, oh God, I don't want to read that. And sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was badly mistaken. When you recommended the Bob book, I looked at it and I went, oh Lord, this is going to be a dog and pony show. And to some degree, it was indeed a dog and pony show, but it was an entertaining dog and pony show. I didn't anticipate it was going to be as entertaining, and I've discovered that listening to books on Audible makes that a little less likely because the narrators help.
Yeah, they do. And I think that sometimes you have difficulty getting into finding the voice for the narrator in a book. And maybe sometimes the professional narrators find a better way to read the book than you would have.
I've discovered I have more patience for a story getting started in burying myself inside the story and not looking to find fault if it's narrated as opposed to read. If I'm reading it, the inner critic tends to come out more.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that when you read a poorly written paragraph, it sometimes can really tear you out of the story. If a good narrator reads that supposedly poorly written paragraph, they can make it music. They
Veronica
really
makes me sound good.
Well, Veronica makes everybody sound good.
But I need somebody to make me sound good.
John Miro, folks like Ray Porter. I mean, they can take a sentence that, and maybe this is part of it. I think there are some writers who, when they're writing, are practically talking out loud because of the cadence they put in and everything else. And I think I do that too, because I know in the future I'm going to be narrating it. So there is a certain level where you put the stuff in there, and I'm like, I go back and look at it from a written standpoint. I'm like, man, I'm not really sure I like how this looks. But then when I narrate it, I'm like, no, that was perfect for narration. Whether or not it works on the page, I don't know, because it's hard to get past that criticality. But the rule for me is, if it sounds right, then it probably is right. And I think you kind of have to trust yourself. But at the same time, if you're new at this, you have to do a little bit more due diligence as far as going back and looking at that kind of stuff. If you're, more of an experienced folk, I think can do it a lot easier. And it's just from the gut. It just kind of comes from experience doing it.
It does. And I think that it's equal measures improving your craft as a beginning writer, learning to actually put the little markings down on the paper, the little squiggles that mean something, that evoke these thoughts in the person that is getting it on the other end. That's one of the parts that's hard for a beginning writer, is to learn how to not leave things out, not say things poorly as a beginning writer. But once you start telling story, those parts will address themselves as you become better, as long as you studiously try to tell a better story. And there will be some point, you're not going to be sure where it happens, where suddenly you realize, I'm not worrying so much about the squiggly bits anymore. I'm suddenly concerned about story elements, adding depth to the setting, learning how to give this character a unique voice. And you're not going to look back and be able to realize where I changed from point A to point B. Suddenly, you're going to have teleported further along and you're going to be a different stage of writer. And you're not going to realize where that transition point was.
So basically you're saying writer evolution is like quantum entanglement? You did say the word teleport.
I did say teleport, but quantum entanglement is not teleportation. Those are separate things.
That's not what it says in the article I read.
It says that they can be separated by a great distance, and yet what happens on one end affects what happens on the other end instantaneously. That is not teleportation. Now, in the quantum universe, things come into existence and they go out of existence. They don't mysteriously, while entangled, separate themselves. That is not what quantum entanglement is.
And once again, I've managed to derail the topic.
Thank you so much for mangling science. You know, I should write a review on some of your books about your science, by God.
No,
everybody else does.
Why not? Yeah, exactly. Everybody else does. Although I'm still fascinated by the people who put on there about exosolar material and exosolar elements, about what a cool idea that is. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get eviscerated by any physicist that reads this.
And to go ahead and just totally take us off topic, I read an article just the other day.
Here we go again.
Talking about something in the outer solar system. And I heard a bit of information that I had not heard before. And they said the reason that they know that there's something out there is that there's a segment of the belt out beyond Pluto, the Kuiper belt, that is at about a 40-degree angle from everything else. And it doesn't continue out. It's actually a discrete section that they said that particular angling says that there is a roughly Mars-shaped object that they have not identified that must sit in that very specific section of belt to go ahead and deflect the entire orbital plane at that spot by 40 degrees. That they can calculate the mass of it, they just don't know where it is. And I said, that's a very specific sort of thing to say. And Paul E. Cooley should know about it.
That goes along with the ideas of you know, the articles I've been seeing lately about forget Planet 9. What about Planet 10? And they're just basically going off and showing gravitational effects on other things besides that. Going to the Oort cloud, for instance, which is something I really haven't dug into yet. But the bottom line is that every day we're finding out a little bit more about our universe, and every day we're finding out more about what's on the bottom of our ocean, strangely enough. And I think that this is just imagination time. How do I use this into a story? How do I put some of these attributes in there? And then always be willing to ask, what if?
You start talking Planet 9, and I took that into account in my Humanity Unlimited saga. And that's one of the comments that one of the beta readers came back with is, in the previously published books, I've introduced a planet out beyond Pluto. And things came from this planet. Physical objects came from this planet. And I did mention them in Tree of Liberty. But I didn't come back to them. I left those threads hanging because in the press of events that were occurring in Tree of Liberty, there just wasn't time. And there's no way with the other things that were happening that the characters could possibly focus on these other objects, even though they're really interesting. When you got a nuke going off next to you, you're not going to say, look at how pretty that is. There's just things that are so pressing that you can't come back to other objects. And so I had the characters, the readers say, gosh, I really wish you could have come back to this, but I can't imagine how you would have fit it in. Right. And that's because I'm a pantser. I put the thread out there. I fully intended when I was starting the thing to come back to that. And then I went, ooh, look how pretty that is. And then went wandering off.
So you're trying to say that as a pantser, you have ADD?
Yes. I'm pretty sure that pantsers everywhere have ADD.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm pretty sure you can't be a pantser without having ADD.
That is one of those things where you kind of have to fight with what you want to do versus what makes sense. Because you can't have, it's really difficult to have the world stop. Like in the Black series, the scientists want to stop and take a moment and basically go study everything. The problem is things are trying to hunt them down and kill them. So it makes it kind of difficult for any serious, scientific.
Prometheus, anyone?
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of Prometheus, any kind of scientific, any real science or investigation to go on, because there's just too much shit. You have to use a sequel to a scene for that. And even then they may not have access to the equipment. They may not have this, they may not have that. So there are things that you have to just kind of gloss by or try and give a hint at, but not be able to go into depth. And maybe sometime later you'll be able to.
It's like this. Anybody that's read those 2 books knows that I introduced basically an extinct civilization. And then I just didn't come back to explore it in a whole lot of detail.
You bad man.
I started to go do that. I started coming back and exploring it, and they found something on Earth. The events there overtook everything that they were trying to accomplish out in the outer system. So they couldn't pay attention to it anymore. Those pieces had to be left sitting on the table because the story demanded that I go in a different direction. Luckily, I can come back.
That's just terrible. I think you just slacked.
If you knew what I left sitting on the table, you would think that I did slack.
Well, the good news is that's an idea you can explore in another book.
Oh, it's already in progress.
Well, there you go.
Events are already in progress. Now that I've cleaned out a few point of view characters, I can come back and explore those sort of things.
Now that I put them in the graveyard.
Now that I've killed Red twice, I can come back.
Now that I've killed Red twice, I can work on Blue. Yeah. There's so many possibilities. There's so many things that Derelict has brought up for ideas for other books in this universe that I just keep adding more and more shit to it. And it's just kind of like, I've got
2 or 3 pages full of what if this happened?
Yep.
What if I explored this thread? Whatever happened to this? And you're going to discover, if you write long enough in a particular setting, you're going to have pages full of things that you just cannot possibly spend the time to actually explore, no matter how freaking fun it would be.
Not in one book.
Not in one book, not in 5 books, not in a dozen books. Because no matter how well you think, I'm going to go back and clear out some of these things, you'll just add more questions to the pile.
Pretty much.
That's how it works.
Pretty much. And that's perfectly fine. That's the way it should go anyway. So I completely agree with you on that.
You know what I'm thinking here? A thought just occurred to me.
Oh, God.
We were talking fan fiction the other day, or even anthologies, things like that. Maybe I should go ahead and take some of the things that I know I'll never explore and go, here's a page full of things that are never going to be explored by me because I just can't see it happening. What's anybody else's take on the matter? Throw open the door and say, knock yourselves out.
That's
it may not affect canon, but here's some ideas. What did I miss, readers? What did I do? I could actually do that sort of thing with Archivos and say, here are various things that I never explored. What does anybody else want to add in? So there's definitely some creativity there that might be tapped at some future date. As long as it doesn't affect my main storyline.
More and more stuff for us to think about. More and more. I love that.
We should drag this thing to a close because we've been babbling for over an hour.
Oh, my God. Yeah, we've been babbling. All right. Holy crap. See, folks, I had an idea for this show. And we'll come back to it. By God. One thing at the beginning of the show.
One controversial statement, and here we are.
It was supposed to just be in the pre-show. It was not controversial. You misunderstood it. And then all hell broke loose. This is how this happens.
Misunderstandings happen.
We're even pantsers when it comes to the episodes.
We are always pantsers when it comes to the episode. There are occasions like today where we think we're coming in with one subject and we totally go a different direction.
Oh, the wonderful glories of being on a show.
You know, as podcasters, we've went from having to worry about specific topics to being pantsers.
Yeah, this is kind of true.
It is totally true.
Yeah.
Pretty soon we're going to get to the point to where we're going to go ahead and invite somebody on and go, we have absolutely no idea what we want to talk about. What do you want to talk about?
That'd be good. I like that idea too. Maybe we should try that in a quote unquote interview. Have
only with somebody we know. Only with somebody we know.
To start out with, I think it'd be a little crazy to bring Jim Butcher on and just, you know, ambush him like that. I think that would be bad.
But it would be really fun to bring somebody else on that we know and just say, okay, Jake Bible, what do you want to talk about?
Oh God, let's not do that. It'll end up with zombies and robots. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
You know, I'm making a note to myself right now.
Oh, fuck, here we go.
Invite Jake on and talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
Oh, good. This should be a wonderful experiment in hell.
He says, I want to talk about this derelict piece of crap.
Oh, God, I hope not. Let's not talk about my pieces of crap.
Hey, whatever Jake wants to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about.
Sheesh. Well, folks,
it's not my fault what Jake wants to talk about.
If I may, I'm trying to close the show up, you grandstanding Muppet. Grandstanding wizard. There we go. If you have a comment, question, or complaint about what we talked about on this episode, you can send an email to show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley because Terry is technologically incapable, as you could notice from the white hair and white beard, of using Twitter.
It's because Twitter is just full of blithering idiots.
Or you can join us on the listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. Hey, I got it right 2 weeks in a row. Imagine that. Where all the crazy happens and questions get asked. And I think we referenced some posts here. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation going on there and the community is constantly growing. You can put up a post about anything and somebody will get back to you. Trust me. So we'd also be remiss if we didn't thank our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, for making all 400 billion episodes of the Dead Robot Society available for your ear holes.
You know what you forgot, right?
No, I haven't forgotten anything.
You did.
What did I forget?
You didn't mention you can email us at show@deadrobotsociety.com.
I started with that.
You did not. You left it off.
I didn't leave it off.
That's what you claim.
So how's that short-term Alzheimer's working out for you?
What are we talking about today?
And we have to thank our $10 patrons, Robert Slade, John Kilgallen, Chris Winder, Chris Winder, like winding a clock, but not blowing in the wind. Isabel Cushy, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, J.R. Hanley.
Here you go. Spit it out, man. Spit it out.
Caleb, Big Bad Booty, Daddy James, and Sue Bayman. Thank you very much for being our $10 patrons. We really appreciate that. It helps us alleviate costs and everything else.
You know what I think we need to do? We need to go ahead and query our $10 patrons for a show topic.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Hey,
they're $10 patrons. They should tell us what they want to hear about.
Well, I kind of covered that while you were getting coffee, but we'll cover it again here. Hey, $10 patrons, send us email, send us complaints, comment on this particular post. Tell us what you want to hear us talk about.
Send us a topic idea, and we will throw it out on the Facebook page and discuss it.
We'll throw it up?
Throw it out.
We'll regurgitate
not throw it up. We will not regurgitate.
No?
No.
Okay. I feel like we're always regurgitating.
But the fact that you are a $10 patron means that you get a hearing. We're going to consider what you want to hear.
You get a hearing, and then we'll declare a mistrial. If you want to help support us so we can pay for hosting and give me a little stipend for spending all the time to edit this mess and make Terry sound good.
Which he does every single time.
Not to mention make me sound intelligent. You should go
a little harder.
Go check us out at patreon.com/DRS podcast. We also have a YouTube channel where we're going to be putting up every episode up there that we do from now on will be up there as well. So you can check that out. And you can always visit us at deadrobotsociety.com. Leave comments there. Leave us comments on Patreon. Leave us comments on Facebook. Wherever you want to leave us comments, we will see them. And with that, did I cover everything?
You did.
Oh, amazing. And with that, we will get out of here. Terry, good to babble with you, and I do mean babble.
Indeed, this was the Babel episode. It is the Tower of Babel.
I was thinking more of a
the Tao of Babel.
Yeah, a Towel of Babel.
T-A-U, Tao, like in Tao Seti.
The Tao of Babel.
Is that pronounced Tao? It starts with a T, so I don't know. I've only ever seen it in writing. I think it's Tao.
I was thinking T-A-O.
That's what I just said.
That's Tao. That's how it's pronounced.
So the solar system that we're talking about is Tao Ceti?
I don't know.
I've always heard it pronounced Tau Ceti, so whatever.
I thought Tau Ceti was T-A-U, not T-O-A, or T-A-O, sorry.
You know, I think that we don't really know what each other is talking about. We should just move along.
On that note, we'll see y'all next
maybe
week.
We can't spell. Let's just move along.
Maybe we can't pronounce. We're repronouncing things.
Again.
On that note, folks, we are out of here.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.